The story begins with the main character, Locke, a young man who has become a Wall Street finance expert through some questionable methods. He has a large office with a panoramic view, and, of course, the high-level executives at his company are benefiting from huge profits thanks to him. However, trouble is inevitable. The board of directors decides to send Locke to a clinic in Switzerland to fetch the company's CEO, P. Brock. Since arriving there, P. Brock has written a letter announcing his renunciation of worldly matters and his decision not to return. Before leaving, Locke visits his elderly mother at the nursing home to say goodbye. Unexpectedly, his mother says strange words, implying that he will never return, almost like a bad omen. After a long journey through small villages, Locke finally reaches the clinic located at the top of a mountain. The driver tells him a chilling story. 200 years ago, this place was a castle owned by a nobleman who was obsessed with blood purity and insisted on marrying his own sister to have children. Naturally, the church could not accept this incestuous act. On their wedding night, the villagers burned them alive and destroyed the castle. A century later, the place was rebuilt as a nursing home. When Locke arrives, he realizes the place is far from deserted. It's filled with people, some playing football, some painting, drinking coffee, and playing cards, creating a peaceful atmosphere with lush greenery and a stunning view of the mountains, almost like a paradise. But Locke is an impatient man. He rushes to the main hall to demand a meeting with P. Brock. However, the clinic has strict visiting hours, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. With no other option, he insists on meeting the director, who eventually arranges a meeting at 7 p.m. With time to spare and no phone signal on the mountain, Locke decides to head down to find a hotel to report to his superiors. But on the way down, a deer suddenly jumps into the road, causing the car to lose control and crash. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself having been unconscious for 3 days. Next to him is the clinic director, VMO, a charming man with a gentle smile. VMO reproaches Locke for being too hasty, saying that if he had been more patient, this wouldn't have happened. The director reassures Locke that he will be well taken care of, urging him to rest and drink plenty of hot water. As he speaks, a nurse brings him a cup of water. With no choice, Locke drinks it. When he looks out the window, he sees the patients living peacefully and enjoying their lives. Just as he's about to finish the drink, he suddenly notices a small parasite inside it, but he's too tired to pay much attention and decides to take a walk. Locke observes that some people are jumping into a pond, others are soaking in bathtubs, and some are diving underwater. But there's something odd. How can these elderly women hold their breath underwater for so long? From a nurse, he learns P. Brock's location and heads to the sauna. When he enters, Locke feels like he's hallucinating. The room has no exit, and he panics. But when the smoke clears, he gradually calms down and finds P. Brock sitting there. At that moment, P. Brock seems like a man who has attained enlightenment, no longer concerned with worldly matters. He speaks mysteriously about the evolution of humans, as if he has renounced all material desires. The conversation continues, and P. Brock reveals that he once knew Locke's father, who started his career around the same time. However, P. Brock's group had manipulated the stock market and caused Locke's father to go bankrupt. Desperate, Locke's father jumped off a bridge right in front of young Locke. While talking, P. Brock suddenly dives into the pool and stays submerged so long that it seems he has drowned. But then, he emerges as if he's been reborn. Afterward, P. Brock's attitude changes completely. He begins asking about the company's situation and suddenly agrees to return to solve the issues. Locke is taken aback by this sudden change but is still relieved. He heads straight to the reception desk to arrange a ride down the mountain. Just then, a singing voice echoes. It's a nurse, who says she is a special case, born and raised in the clinic and has never left. While chatting, she casually mentions that no one has ever left this place, and no one wants to. Her words leave Locke feeling confused, as if the clinic holds some deeper mystery. The next day, Locke visits P. Brock's room, only to find it cleaned out, as though P. Brock had left. Feeling suspicious, Locke confronts the director, who calmly explains that P. Brock's condition suddenly worsened. The director claims that P. Brock has been transferred to the next phase of treatment. Locke refuses to accept this and accuses the clinic of exploiting patients for profit. During the argument, Locke suddenly starts bleeding from his nose and passes out. When he wakes up, he finds the director still calm and even more helpful, arranging a recovery treatment for him. While in the director's office, Locke notices a photo of the nurse he met earlier. The file says she was diagnosed with developmental delay and didn't begin speaking until she was 11. The director treats her like his own daughter. Locke begins to suspect a strange connection between them. Taking advantage of the director's absence, Locke secretly looks through the medical files and finds P. Brock's record. He hides it to study later. Soon after, he is taken to a large water tank known as the regression room. The director explains that this therapy allows patients to relieve the sensation of being in the womb to detoxify their bodies. Locke is placed in the water tank, breathing through an oxygen mask, and starts sinking into childhood memories. Suddenly, a nurse enters and begins undressing. However, what shocks Locke is her body, which looks unnaturally aged, completely unlike her real age, as if she were an old woman. The situation becomes even more bizarre when an elderly man in the clinic acts strangely, and the nurse gives him a mysterious liquid. Locke remembers seeing other patients drink the same liquid earlier, which was claimed to be a vitamin, but now he begins to suspect that it's something far more sinister. While he's immersed in his memories, Locke doesn't realize that a group of eels has silently surrounded him in the water. They slither around him, almost suffocating him. Fortunately, a nurse notices the oddity and pulls him out of the water. But when they look back, the water appears completely normal, with no sign of the eels. Could it be that the director was right, and the water therapy causes hallucinations? Back in his room, Locke checks the file he had hidden, but instead of the documents he expected, he finds only photos of teeth and complex medical data he can't understand. Looking out the window, he sees a gardener moving something under an old machine. The next day, Locke meets with an elderly woman who loves researching history. They had previously talked a lot about the clinic's past. She tells him that, according to documents she found, the villagers burned the nobleman alive 200 years ago, not just for marrying his sister, but because they discovered mummified bodies that seemed to be from his medical experiments. This was the real reason the villagers revolted and destroyed the castle. The elderly woman warns him that the clinic is truly dangerous. Later, Locke sees the nurse he met before. He gives her a doll that his mother made, in exchange for some information. He hoped the girl would lead him to the village, but she revealed that she had never left the mountain since she was born. She was curious about the outside world, so they both decided to leave the nursing home and head to the village. They went to a tavern where Lockhart noticed that the mysterious liquid had appeared here too. He had come to the village to find a doctor to ask about the medical records, but in this small village, the only person who could help was a veterinarian. Although he wasn't a medical doctor, the vet could still read the records. He revealed that the data contained information about Pete Brock's tooth loss, with dehydration being identified as the cause. However, what was strange was that when Lockhart saw Pete Brock, his teeth were perfectly intact. Had someone replaced his teeth? Even more suspicious, the director always encouraged patients to drink water daily. How could Pete Brock have lost so much water? The vet then revealed a horrifying truth. The Baron used to conduct experiments not because his sister was ill, but because all the children born to them were deformed and could not survive. Meanwhile, the girl with Lockhart was fascinated by a phonograph. A red-haired young man in the tavern gave her a coin to play music, and when the song played, she unknowingly danced to the rhythm. But the young man had ill intentions and kept approaching her, trying to take advantage of her. At that moment, Lockhart returned and quickly made a phone call to his company. He learned that only high-ranking officials at the nursing home had access to the mysterious liquid. Sensing something was off, Lockhart asked the girl about her relationship with the people at the nursing home. This made the young man angry, and they got into a fight. With a hurt leg, Lockhart couldn't win. Fortunately, the director showed up just in time and took both of them back to the nursing home. Although Lockhart wanted to leave, he had no choice but to return to his room. He was shocked to realize that his own teeth had started falling out. Panicking, he picked up a fallen tooth and told the nurse to soak it in milk, a method of preservation for possible reimplantation. Later, he secretly checked the nurse's schedule and discovered that Pete Brock had been sent to the 4-room. Following the trail, he ended up in the basement of the nursing home, where he accidentally met an elderly woman researching history. She revealed a shocking discovery. The Baron's sister had been pregnant when the villagers tied her to a post to burn her alive. They pulled the baby out of her womb and threw it into the mineral-rich soil. Horrifyingly, the baby survived. Just then, 2 nursing home staff members heard a noise, and Lockhart hurriedly hid in a secret room. There, he found a series of patients suspended in a water tank, including Pete Brock. They looked like preserved specimens. This was the 4-room the director had mentioned. Terrified, Lockhart tried to escape but was caught by the director as punishment for breaching the records. The director ordered a dentist to drill into his teeth. Meanwhile, another wealthy woman arrived at the nursing home to become a new client. In the midst of the chaos, Lockhart managed to escape, jumped into a car, and headed to the village to report to the police. He thought he had finally been saved, but when he entered the police station, he discovered that the mysterious liquid was on the desk of the officer as well. It was clear they were all in league with the director. Soon after, The engine roared, and the director and manager appeared, claiming that Lockhart was their patient, suffering from delusions and a tendency toward violence. Lockhart immediately refuted, accusing the nursing home of killing patients and immersing their bodies in the water tank. But just as he finished speaking, P. Brock calmly walked out, looking perfectly healthy. Lockhart was stunned. He had seen P. Brock submerged in the tank like a specimen. How could he now be standing here, alive? This made Lockhart start to doubt himself. Could it be that he was truly suffering from delusions? Returning to his room, he heard water splashing in the toilet for the third time. When he lifted the lid, he was horrified to see it full of eels, but in the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. He began to lose his sense of reality, unable to distinguish between what was real and what was an illusion. After that, Lockhart reluctantly accepted his status as a patient and obediently participated in the water therapy sessions. He was even taken down to the 4-room in the basement. Then one day, he remembered something P. Brock had said. Lockhart suddenly realized something strange. His leg had been in a cast since the accident, but in reality, it was just a setup the nursing home had imposed on him. This didn't mean his leg was actually injured. He immediately tore off the bandage and discovered that his leg was perfectly fine. At that moment, he decided to uncover the truth about the ruins beneath the nursing home. After breaking down a steel door, Lockhart entered a vast cave, where he found a giant underground water tank surrounded by laboratory equipment related to research on eels. There were also many glass jars containing deformed fetuses, along with several human skin masks. He suddenly realized the terrifying truth: the Baron was still alive. He had never left this place. On a painting hanging on the wall, Lockhart saw a woman who resembled the girl he had met. If his assumption was correct, she was the Baron's sister and wife, and the girl must be their daughter. But if they had lived for so long, how could that be possible? Suddenly, he heard a noise. The gardener from earlier was throwing dead bodies into the water tank, where they were immediately devoured by the eels. When the gardener noticed Lockhart, they both engaged in a fight. Meanwhile, the girl unexpectedly had her first period, and blood flowed onto the floor. She didn't understand what was happening and, terrified, ran to find the director. When the director saw the blood, he was shocked, but then a gleam of joy appeared in his eyes. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Only after she reached puberty would she be able to conceive, confirming the theory that the director was the Baron from years ago. By this time, Lockhart had caught up. He immediately exposed the truth: the nursing home was actually killing patients for experiments. But the brainwashed patients didn't believe him and surrounded him. Lockhart was captured and placed in a distillation device, then taken to a brightly lit room where P. Brock was also present. The director, no longer hiding the truth, confessed everything. It turned out that the eels in the underground water tank could live for 300 years, but the water was highly toxic. Humans couldn't drink it directly but had to go through a distillation process to extract the essence. The Baron's biggest mistake had been kidnapping villagers for experiments, which led to their discovery and revolt, ultimately killing him. However, now the nursing home only accepted volunteers. Once brainwashed, they would willingly stay without anyone noticing. The patients who were killed would be devoured by the eels, leaving no trace. At that moment, the director inserted a tube into Lockhart's mouth and poured the live eels inside. He explained that the patients' bodies would evolve step by step through water therapy. Once combined with the distillation process and the eels, they could absorb the eels' immortality. Lockhart had now been completely brainwashed. Meanwhile, the director brought a wedding dress for the girl. She felt something was wrong and ran to find Lockhart. But when she met him, she was shocked to see how much he had changed. He spoke emptily, saying that this place was wonderful and there was no need to leave. Even his previously broken teeth had been perfectly restored. In despair, the girl walked away. That night, the director held a bizarre ceremony, with servants holding candles. The room was filled with a dark, oppressive atmosphere, and everyone danced wildly in the main hall. Meanwhile, the director took the girl down to the cave and set up a bed. His intentions were clear. Terrified, the girl couldn't do anything. At the same time, Lockhart accidentally found a piece of paper left by the woman researching history. It said that the girl knew nothing, that she was innocent. Realizing the truth, Lockhart rushed to the manager's office, where he found a photograph capturing the reconstruction process of the nursing home in 1912. In the photo, there is a man holding the design blueprint, his body wrapped. The tape had clearly been destroyed, and there was no doubt anymore it was the Baron. The man in the picture was holding hands with someone. As he peeled away the paper covering the photo, Locke was horrified to realize that it was the doll-like girl he had met before. The truth was clear: the director was none other than the Baron from years ago, and he had survived using an alchemical process to distill the elixir of life. Now, he was preparing to do the same to his own daughter. No more time to waste. Locke rushed into the cave to stop him. He yelled, "You won't even spare your own daughter." The Baron dropped his calm facade and launched a brutal attack on Locke. Literally tearing off his mask, the Baron revealed a terrifying face beneath and knocked Locke down with a powerful punch. However, Locke had prepared for this. He had already poured gasoline on the floor, waiting for the right moment. Flames erupted, engulfing the Baron, but the Baron didn't panic. It was as if he was too familiar with being burned alive. He charged at Locke again. Just as the Baron was about to throw Locke into a pit full of eels, the girl suddenly sat up and, with all her strength, killed her own father. The fire from the cave spread through the ventilation system into the grand hall, turning the entire institute into a sea of flames. The brainwashed partygoers went into a frenzy, running for their lives, while the manager stood by, staring blankly. It was as though he had witnessed this scene 200 years ago. Everything was fate, repeating itself. Locke and the girl escaped the cave, but outside, it was nothing but a raging inferno. There was nothing left to hold onto. They decided to take a bike and leave this nightmare behind. However, as they were descending the mountain, they unexpectedly encountered the company executives, who had just arrived to look for Pete Brock. They had no idea what had transpired inside. All they cared about was taking Pete Brock back to handle the company's affairs. Locke bluntly refused, severing all ties with these greedy people. He continued cycling with the girl, leaving the institute behind. At that moment, a knowing smile appeared on his face, for from this moment on, he was the only one in the outside world who knew the secret of eternal life. And so, the story comes to an end.